going to win this game.
The Broncos have been in 3 overtime games this year. It's Thomas in the left and slip. To the 30, to the 20, Thomas to the 10. And the pocket is good.
Ball knocked out of his hands. It bounces around. And I think Denver's got it. Von Miller again. Wilson fires. Caught. Touchdown. Sutton. His second of the day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Denver Bronco Roundup. Of course, I'm your host, Keith Brugman. This is Jody Moncrief, and we're here to kick off episode number 6 of the Denver Bronco Roundup. Of course, we're a proud podcast of the Rocky Mountain Sports Network. Check out Rocky Mountain Sports Network Facebook page to get updates on this podcast and other podcasts as we keep you caught up on all the latest from your favorite team. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Jody, how we doing, bud? Can't hear you, man.
Sorry. Well,
Hey.
doing good. Welcome, Broncos country. Gotta have the mic on.
Yeah, technical difficulties always a part of the show. I always love it. You know, I'm glad you got it out of the way. It doesn't have to be me now. I should be clear. It was you. We're done. We're finished.
Good.
All clear show after this, right, man?
Yep, ready to roll.
Ready to roll, man. Well, man, I tell you what, there's a lot going on. We're what now? 8 days from training camp, kicking off, man. It's gonna be wild. It seems like this off season. Well, in every off season, right? We go out there. We're worried about, hey, there's nothing going on. There's all this downtime. Especially with us doing the Denver Bronco Roundup and really breaking down each position, man. It has flown by. It seems like it's right around the corner. I don't know about you, man, but I'm super excited to finally see some pads and some guys on the field at the UC Health Training Center, bud.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. Looking forward to another little meeting in San Diego and going to throw to the receivers one more time before training camp and off and running.
Did you happen to catch Russell Wilson's little workout video that he put out?
Just briefly. I didn't watch the whole thing, though.
It was pretty impressive, man. I tell you what, it just gets me more and more excited to see this guy on the field. I know he's taken a lot of heat when it's come to his jet setting around the world, but I tell you what, his workout videos and his work ethic when he ends up coming inside the building is compared to nobody else, really. It's really off the charts. I haven't seen anything like it, really. So,
I'm stoked. It's been 6 years since we've had a good quarterback here, so.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I was actually listening to another podcast, and they're like, we talk about that, and we're like, dang, it's been 6 years, but at the same time, we are blessed. It's only been 6 years at the same time when it comes to some of the other franchises out there who struggle for years and years as they try to get on track.
Yep.
Well, one other thing I just wanted to bring up. I know that we talked about it a little bit before, but some of these jerseys and helmets that are coming out for the next season have been off the charts. We've had the Cincinnati Bengals coming out with their Bengal whites.
Bengal whites.
Yep. We've had the Texans coming out with their red. And I forget they did have a name for that as well. I can't recall it off the top of my head. And then today, Carolina Panthers come out with theirs. I don't know if there's any others. How about you, bud? Have you seen all of those?
Yeah, I've seen them. They all look pretty sharp, really.
Yeah, I think it's been awesome. I mean, it's just the first one I saw, obviously, was that Texans red, and it just reminded that candy apple, like just.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, just popped right off the bat, and then the Bengals had always been talking about doing those white Bengal uniforms. It's always been kind of rumored and talked about.
Right.
It's like, it'll never happen. And then this year we finally get it. And then today with the Carolina Panthers, man, those all blacked out jerseys and helmets, man. It looks slick, man. I tell you. Which one of the three was your favorite of the three? The Texans?
I'm not a big Red fan, but the Texans, I think they look pretty sharp.
Yeah. I agree. My favorite, if I had to choose, I think I love those Panthers. But like we were talking about it right before we got on the show, it's a good thing. I think they're either using this in October or November. I can't remember the exact date, but it's a good thing it's later in the year, because I tell you what, if it's like an 11 o'clock game, 2 o'clock or 11 o'clock game in the middle of August in those all black jerseys, all in Carolina, whew, that could be a little hot.
Yep.
There's a reason that Miami wears those light colors uniforms, man, I'll tell you that. Oh, geez. Well, we got a couple of people jumping in. We got actually a fellow a guest last week, Albert Knoppers, jumping in and saying hello. So welcome in, Albert. I appreciate you jumping in, being a consumer today, not just a co-host the other night. So appreciate it. What about the cleats with the promise of another ring? I know that Jody tweeted that out in our group a little bit. I think that was yesterday when you put that out. Maybe it was today.
Yep,
Pretty sick, man.
Loving the confidence.
Heck yeah, man. I mean, it right mindset. Like I said, just the right mindset. So, wow. Yeah, another guy. I'm not sure which one he was looking at, but saying he also loves it as well. So, guys, if you don't want to let your name be known when you jump into the link, it's right at the very beginning. I know that Matt usually tries to guide me on telling me exactly how it is, but there is a place that says, hey, allow my name. If you don't want to allow your name, again, just throw your name in the comment before you comment. That way I can at least say, hey, John, or hey, Albert, or whoever it happens to be. I appreciate it, guys. So, wow. What the thing that really gets me excited is that for me, seeing all these jerseys and helmets come out, is the Broncos should have one too. The thing that I found this out, the thing that always held back us trying to get like throwback jerseys and the whole 9 yards is we always had to retain our helmet. We only had one set of helmets. That's why we always had these clashing helmets with our jerseys. Well, the NFL this year said, you need to go out and you need to get a full second set of helmets. Well, now that we get a full second set of helmets, that opens up the door. That makes it mandatory. If you're going to do another helmet, why do the exact same helmet?
Right.
Do something different. Might as well change that jersey. That's the inexpensive part of it all, right? So it makes me really excited to see to guess and try to imagine what we might be able to see from the Denver Broncos, because these first three have not just been your standard uniforms. It really, Cincinnati would have been really easy to just go back to their old Bengal style uniforms, you know what I mean, or something like that. They took it in a different direction. Excited to see if Denver does the same.
Do you want to see them go in the blue or more towards the orange?
I know I get one commenter on the Denver Bronco Roundup that would say, absolutely, they cannot go orange. He hates the orange. I'm an orange guy. I think they could do something really cool with that. Hopefully it doesn't come off too color rush. But
I like the orange, but I hope they don't do something too much like the Rockies did with the all green. The green pants was too much.
Oh goodness, yeah. Yeah, the what was it, state plate jerseys? Yeah. That was
the green's a little too much.
The jersey would have been fine if they would have kept some regular looking pants. It was the pants that just threw it off. My goodness.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, hideous. And it would be better. I always feel like if your team is like at the top of the heap and they come out with something like that, it's like you feel like you can kind of, I don't know, get behind it a little bit or support it, but when your team is kind of having a rough go of it, and then they come out with some jerseys that are getting laughed at on top of it, man, that does not make the experience any easier, man. Oh, well, like I said, I'm excited. Hopefully we see Denver Broncos and their uniforms, their helmets come out soon. Man, I tell you what, with the jersey sales and everything else come out with all these different looks, it could really just be popping off the charts. I'm sure the NFL and the Denver Broncos would be happy for that. So.
Yep, for sure.
All right. Well, I just want to take a moment. I just want to tell you a little bit more about the Rocky Mountain Sports Network. The Rocky Mountain Sports Network has a team of creators that keep you informed on all your favorite teams, from Nuggets to Avalanche, Broncos, and Rockies, college football, Mammoth, X-League football, they've got you covered, and it seems they're always adding more. So check them out. Head over to the Rocky Mountain Sports Network Facebook page, follow, like, share, become part of the team today, guys. So, well, I know that we had a little bit of a question earlier. Said, what are we talking about tonight? And without further ado, we're breaking down that roster. We got another big full room, bud. It's fairly stacked, and not in a way that it's like we have overwhelming talent from top to bottom, but we definitely have some decisions that I think will need to be made. Let's just go ahead and pull up what we have available right now. And I apologize because I put the slide together the other day, and then I realized, hey, I even left out a couple of names off of this. A couple of guys that came in off of free agent signings right out of college, and that was also Jaquan McMillan and Donnie Lewis Jr. So, Jody, why don't you start with some of your thoughts when it comes to these training camp battles and what fans might see when they hit the field come week one, bud?
I'm excited to see what PS2 can do in year two. Build off of his pretty impressive rookie season, and take that leap into being a true number one and elite cornerback that gets mentioned when you talk who's the best of the NFL. I think he has those skills.
Yeah, and he's going to have to take those skills. When you look at this room, and even with a couple of names I left off of this slide that we have up for our viewers out there, how many of these guys are returning guys for the Denver Broncos?
What, three?
Three guys,
Four?
man.
I guess you could count Sing Basby. He was here half the season.
Yeah,
They cut him
Sing Basby,
and then re-signed him.
Yep, went over to the Chargers for just a little stint last year, but re-signed this year, comes back to the Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
But guys who were truly on this roster who, were in those meeting rooms, for 17 weeks, during the regular season. You're looking at three. You're looking at three guys, and Patrick Surtain II, Ronald Darby, and Michael Ojemudia. We let go of a couple of guys, and one that you were kind of surprised about. Talk about that.
Callahan. I thought that Bryce was probably, if not Denver's best, Denver's second best corner last year, probably the last 2 years. I'm not surprised that he went, because that's the route that George Payton's been going, is bringing in his own guys, and that was not one of his guys. So.
Yeah, but at the same time, kind of a big exit, like you said, a guy that was obviously in this room and helped solidify that room and had some tenure. You know what I mean? Not only in the league, but also again with the Broncos. So
right,
and
he could play outside and inside. That was a big thing that I liked about where K1. I think he's just strictly a slot.
That's where he spent the majority of his time. It's where he's known. He's more of a downhill guy, even though he's, obviously all over the field and covering guys, covering receivers all over the field, I guess is what I was trying to get to. Sorry, I had a little notification that jumped up and lost my concentration for a second.
That's all right.
So
Albert says Callahan is too injury prone, and I think that's one of the reasons he's probably not. That's one of the reasons he's not here or has not made it to the elite. When you talk top corners, is because of the injury history. I mean, when he's on the field, he is an elite corner, in my opinion.
And Facebook user jumps in and says Callahan made plays when he played, though. So exactly what you're saying, Albert, as you mentioned, maybe just a little bit too injury prone, as you were talking about. To really take that leap and be that top notch guy, that corner that everyone's coveting, right, in the league,
right.
But at the same time, as another one of our listeners chimes in, said, he did make the plays when he was out there. He just couldn't get on the field enough to really make sure that he solidified a spot on this Denver Broncos roster. So again,
right.
Callahan out, K'Wan Williams in, filling that spot. K'Wan Williams, comes over trying to fill that nickel spot, and hopefully, is able to do so. That's really where we need him to
All right.
to jump in and fill. So.
I thought he played decent in San Francisco, and he knows this scheme. So, I mean, that's all. I think that's a big plus right there, knowing this scheme.
Yeah, and as we kind of talked about before, I think another thing is just his ability to. He was matched up against the Los Angeles Rams, and if you look at our coaching staff, our Denver Broncos defensive coaching staff, it's loaded with just Rams coaches. You know what I mean? These are guys that had to go up against K'Wan Williams. At least twice a season, if not more, when it comes to playoffs and the like. So, looking at the rest of this roster, though, we start talking about some of those guys that can start filling the holes. We obviously know Patrick Surtain's going to fill a role. We know that Ronald Darby's going to fill a role. We look at K'Wan Williams is going to fill a role, and then we start looking at the guys who are going to back these guys up. If I remember right, let me see if I have that information. Last year, on the 2021 roster, we kept 6 guys, stashing another 2 on the practice squad, so a total of 8.
Right.
And again, those who are watching at home as well, keep in mind I have 2 names that aren't on that list that you're seeing on the screen. Again, with Jaquan McMillan and Donnie Lewis Jr. So we talk about it every week, Jody. Cornerbacks, who starts backing up who? How do you see this shaking up? How does the 53-man kind of fall, and how do you think the practice squad falls as well? What do we look like week 1?
I think after the 3 guys you named, they're expecting big things from Michael Ojemudia. I mean, he's coming off that knee injury, but what would that be, 18? He balled out against Kansas City. He played really well. He probably dropped 2 or 3 interceptions right in his hands in that game. He was right there making plays the whole game, and I think that he's poised to have a big year next year. And I think he is one of the reasons Callahan's not back, because they're counting on big things from him.
Agreed. Maybe didn't hit the field as much as we really wanted or expected last year, even when he was not injured. It seemed like he was kind of held out, but really came on at the end, and that week 17 game looked fantastic. So the other thing that makes me wonder about things, we start talking about, the reason that the Rams might have brought in K'Wan Williams. Then we also have Blesson Austin, came over from the Seattle Seahawks. What do you think? At the same time, he only got 1 start last year. He only has about 28 starts in his career. 1 start last year for the Seahawks, and this Seahawks team, quite honestly, wasn't that great when it comes to their defense either. So it's not like there should have been a whole lot of guys that should have been holding him back if he was an all-star. Where does a guy like that fall as far as this roster is concerned?
I think he makes this roster. I think he's a notch below Michael O, but he's a good depth guy that, has starting experience. And you got some of these guys are going to have to play special teams. That's a factor that a lot of people, don't look at. I mean, your 4th, 5th corners are going to play special teams, and you need guys to do that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You need those gunners. You need those guys who can cover gunners, right? And a lot of times when we're looking at these guys, when it comes to the cornerbacks, when it comes to maybe a guy that's a little bit further down on the depth chart, when it comes to running back and the like, these are the guys that you're really looking to have hit the field as well. I just want to point out, I know that we had some people like in the chat just really quick. For some reason, and I'll get more details, Paul, I don't know why for me on StreamYard, it doesn't show your name. It says Albert's obviously probably in on the Facebook stream, and he's saying he sees his name just fine. So until further notice, I'll just take a Facebook user as Paul. So Paul, thanks for tuning in as well. Albert, I just want to go through a few comments really quick. PS2, Ojemudia, Darby, and Williams for sure. Victor, thank you for chiming in. Hopefully someday we'll cut Josie Jewell, and then we'll have to go on to something else. What Who is the next player maybe after Josie Jewell, Victor? That's the next big question. And Albert jumping in and says Bassie has been a liability often. Yeah, I know that a lot of people are really excited about him. He was an undrafted guy that came in. I know that he got injured. I know that he had a little bit of time with San Diego, but I don't remember him hitting the field too much for the Broncos. Maybe you have a better recollection, Jody. All I know is I think he's one of those unproven commodities in my mind that maybe comes into training camp and has something that we can has something to prove, and maybe something that we can get out on the field and see if he has that ability, right?
You're right. I don't really remember so much last year. I remember 2 years ago. I mean, him playing sparingly, and it wasn't good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. I don't remember enough. I don't remember it at all. So, if you're not remembering good, I'm not remembering at all. Maybe that helps shake out this. The thing that one of the picks that I was really excited about in this draft is obviously on this page because we have a couple of guys that were picked in the draft, but Damari Mathis, man, he is just a freak athlete, and I would love to see, maybe he's one of those guys that you were talking about that ends up hitting the special teams, but I certainly hope he ends up getting a roster spot on here. But then you also have a guy like Faion Hicks. He comes from Wisconsin. That's a pro style defense that he's used to. He has that ability to jump in there. You still even go down to Jaquan McMillan. Here's a guy that was, all American last year. Had like 6-7 interceptions. And maybe the long shot, Donnie Lewis Jr., that comes out of Tulane. This is where I was saying at the very beginning, we have a stacked roster, not necessarily that we're fantastic top to bottom, but after you get past those first 3, maybe 4 guys, man, there's a lot of decisions to be made as far as how do we stash these guys? Where do they end up? And can we keep them all? Probably not, right?
Right. No, I'm excited to see Damari Mathis. I think one thing that I'm excited for is he can play inside and outside.
Yes.
He brings that. I mean, that's the one thing I worry about with K1 and this roster is who do you have if K1 goes down as a slot guy? You don't have another true slot on this roster.
Well, you don't have a whole lot of names that had a whole lot of time on the field at the same time, right? It just really, again, once we get past those 3 or 4 guys and we start talking to Damari Mathis, Faion Hicks, obviously rookies, Asang Bassie, very little time, Blasan Austin, again, very little time on the field. So, boy, again, we have some great guys that we can put out there, I think, and Patrick Surtain II and Ronald Darby. We have a fantastic pairing right there at number 1 and number 2 corner. And I don't think a lot of people could really argue that. But dang, when it starts coming to, let's face it, Patrick Surtain, he missed a little bit of time last year.
Yeah,
Ronald Darby missed a little bit of time last year. So
K1 Williams missed a little bit of time last year. I mean.
Yeah, if we want to go, for him when he was playing with the Niners. So we have our 3, Michael Ojemudia missed a little bit of time last year. Yeah. So, we really need to have these guys. Hopefully we don't end up in that situation where we see multiple guys down at the same time. But boy, when you start talking about 1 or 2 of these guys going down and some of these guys needing to fill in, we really need them to fill in if we're going to have a run and continue to be a dominant defense, I think, in this next year.
I agree. I got a question for you. I got a little wish list of there's one guy out there that still hasn't been signed that I think might be on Denver's radar, Chris Harris Jr. What do you think about that? Fan favorite. Man. I mean, he's a little past his prime, but
do you think he left in a good enough way? He was not a happy camper when he left. Let's just put it that way. He was not
I
happy.
agree with that, but I mean, that regime is gone.
Yeah,
and he had his best years here. I mean, second team All-Pro, 3 years, a Super Bowl. I mean, man, he had some really great seasons here that you're not going to see very often. I mean, he was pretty good for Denver.
Yeah, man, that is. I kind of lost. I'll be honest. You know, he didn't get, as far as when I saw, he didn't get a whole lot of time with the Los Angeles Chargers on the field. He wasn't, you know, obviously their number one, number two guy.
Right.
He was playing a backup role. He, if memory serves me, he wasn't fantastic, but he at the same time, you know, he wasn't surrounded by a fantastic defense. It's one of the things that obviously our rival in the Los Angeles Chargers went out this season and tried to really, you know, address, you know, obviously address, because that's all they did is go after defense. So, you know, maybe that was a product of just him not being surrounded by a whole lot of talent. And when that's the case, you end up playing outside of your game. But at the same time, boy, I just want to look at film. The name is so intriguing to me. Obviously, like you said, it's a name we all know. It's a name we all love. It's one that we hope to see, you know, would love to almost to see back on the field. I don't want my passion to override my analysis. Let's put it that way.
Agree.
You know what I mean? But it is a super intriguing name, man. I didn't, you know, that's one thing, the things I haven't been tracking is some of those guys that are still out there as far as free agents with a 90-man roster. And, you know, all these teams are having to cut down. I'll be honest. It's one name that it's one category that I haven't kept up on, but great name, man. I appreciate that.
Jody. It's intriguing. Fantastic. I don't know that it's going to happen. I mean, knock on wood, we have no injuries, but I think that might be an easy call to make, that if someone does go down.
Yeah, man. Might be the early call out for a late free agent signing. Might be right on the money. Might see what Vegas has put in as far as odds on that, and maybe throw a buck on there, buddy. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Ben Thompson is jumping in. I don't know Charles Norman III. Are you familiar?
I'm not sure who that is.
Ben Thompson. If you can give us a little bit more information on Charles Norman III, I'd certainly take a look at him. Maybe give you an opinion. It might have to be next show. Obviously, I don't like to try to do it mid-show, but always looking for great names that we can maybe obviously add to this Denver Broncos roster. So thank you for everybody for obviously tuning in and chiming in as well. So, boy, one of the things that just intrigues me again, we talk about those free agent, college free agent signings. We kind of do have a run of keeping one guy on the roster here in Broncos country. So a guy maybe like Jaquan McMillan is another name for me.
Yeah.
Again, that maybe has that possibility. I'm not sure if that will be the case. We have obviously a lot of good talent. We went through a lot of it before, hitting a lot of the offensive and defensive positions already. It'll be interesting to see. I will say sometimes I do feel like I don't want to get in too much trouble with Broncos country. But I feel like sometimes we hold on to that a little bit too much and want to get somebody on the roster, and hopefully we never do it to, you know, cut our nose to spite our face. You know what I mean? In order to do it, you know, I think we have a very talented roster this year, especially with the idea and the mindset this coaching staff is coming with. So making these choices and making sure that you're stacked in the right positions is going to be key, like in cornerback, where if a couple of these guys go down, we need the right guys to fill in. So,
right, and with us, I see us running a lot of nickel and dime. I mean, you're going to have an extra corner or two on the field.
Extra corner or two, or maybe even flexing a safety in.
Yeah, agreed.
You know, at times in order to make that happen. So it's this will be a good transition. We'll be obviously heading into safeties next. Any last thoughts that you have on our cornerbacks, man?
No, I think Denver ultimately will keep 6 guys like they did last year.
Yeah.
And the way you kind of have them from top to bottom, and then the next top 2, I think, make this roster.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. Like I said, a lot of talent, some guys that they brought in obviously on contracts and bonuses, you know what I mean, to get them here. Some interesting picks in the draft to back these guys up with, I think, some interesting talent. So I think it's really going to be, as we hit training camp, one of those things where who shines, who looks good, who's making improvements each week. That might really determine these last few spots in the cornerback room. So, man,
agree.
listeners, if you have any ideas, any thoughts on this as well, obviously keep your coming in. So, but right now, we got another training camp battle. We're gonna have to jump right in, jump over into safeties, bud. And safety room is another one of those rooms, like I said, with cornerbacks, where we're pretty dang stacked, especially with names that we know,
Right.
especially here in Broncos country. So, for anybody not watching, maybe just tuning in, just on the slide that we have right now, Justin Simmons, Kareem Jackson, Jamar Johnson, Caden Stearns, DeLauren Turner-Yell, J.R. Reed, and P.J. Locke. Boy, a lot of names we know, a lot of, like I said, and then just a couple of new faces. Again, what do you think of the safety room as we kind of head into training camp and eventually get to that 53-man roster, Jody?
I think your starters are pretty well cemented in. Justin Simmons, I mean, ESPN ranked him as the number one safety.
How about that, bud?
Yeah, I was a little surprised, but I mean, great for him and great for this team. I mean, that they didn't overlook what he brings to this team. It's not just about interceptions or, one stat line.
Correct. And even going, not to cut you off, but even going back to when George Payton first came in and he said, Justin Simmons is a Bronco. He's a guy that needs to stay here and be a Bronco. Held on to that, and thank goodness, like you said, now we have the number one safety according to ESPN on our roster. Easy to slot him in the number one spot as you start to go through.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Continue.
And then Kareem Jackson, I think, hopefully Father Time has not caught up with him yet. Denver brought him back on a cheap 1-year deal. Hopefully his leadership and being a veteran, I hope that can help this team with as young as they are in the as young as they are in the secondary.
Yeah, and for a while it didn't look like Kareem Jackson was coming back. When the offseason first kicked off, he literally came out and said, "I haven't heard from the Broncos."
Right.
So we were looking at replacements pretty quickly at that point, thinking that PJ Locke or the like is going to be jumping in and probably filling that hole for us. But Kareem, like you said, comes back, really inexpensive 1-year deal. I'm a big proponent of Kareem Jackson. I think that quite honestly, just who he is as far as a leader, Justin Simmons is that quiet leader. Kareem Jackson, if you know anything about Kareem Jackson, is not a quiet leader. He's out there jawing all the time. As they say, I guess him and Coach Hackett have been jawing back and forth as they were in mini camp and OTAs. He's just that vocal leader that I think we really need, especially as we've moved on from guys like a Von Miller who maybe fulfilled that role as well. I'm happy to see Kareem Jackson back. I don't think he's lost as much of a step as a lot of people. I know that there's always going to be a play that you can point to here or there where he's like, hey, that guy was out of place. There was a big play over him. I know on 1 or 2 occasions last season. But again, I think from what he brings from a leadership standpoint, and I don't think he's lost a step. I think it's a great signing, especially for the dollar that we saw. So again, I keep cutting you off. I keep telling you, hey, go ahead and go. But yeah, that's my thoughts. So
I think that's the biggest thing is why he's here is the leadership part of it. Besides Justin Simmons, this whole secondary is young, very young. I mean, really, it is. Even PS2, he's only going into his 2nd year. Michael O was his 3rd year. Didn't play at all last year, but 1 game.
Agreed. And you even have guys like PJ Locke and Caden Stearns who were really getting on the field for the first time last year, in any real true capacity. So, like you said, really, really, really young team up and down the board. Just a couple of comments. I'll just jump in. Albert jumping in. He says Caden Stearns will be a surprise after training camp. Paul's not He's wondering what's so surprising, or how can you be surprised? Obviously, Paul's a big Caden Stearns fan. Put some great tape on the field last season. It'll be interesting to see how this training camp and this next season plays out. Albert jumping in, he thinks Kareem or Caden will be fighting for a starter position. Do you think Kareem has a possibility of getting knocked out like Albert does?
No, I think he's got a leg up, but I mean that's a good problem if hopefully it's not because Kareem is playing bad. I hope it's because Stearns is taking his game to the next level and he's forcing the coaches to play him, that they can't keep him off the field. That's a good problem for Denver to have.
Agreed. And, one of the things that, if you watched Coach Hackett take the podium, he said time and time and time again, it's the best player takes the field. The best player takes the field. I know that we hear that a lot. We hear that from a lot of different coaching regimes, but until I actually hear or see differently, I'm going to take this guy at his word. I'm going to expect to see the best players on the field every single week, until we start seeing maybe some of the things that, quite honestly, the last regime, some of the things maybe we saw under Vic Fangio where it seemed like he played favorites or unfavorites to some of the players. If I start seeing that, then I'll call it out. But until then, I'm really excited to see what actually hits the field. Maybe a Caden Stearns does have a chance over Kareem Jackson. I see Kareem Jackson in that spot. I think they brought him back for a reason. I know that it's an inexpensive contract, but I think his leadership on the field is really what you're paying for. And you got to remember, this is a guy that has now played two positions and has gotten two contracts for each position that he's played.
Right.
Two contracts as a cornerback. He's gotten two contracts as a safety. There's something about this guy. I think he's got a little bit more left in the tank. It might make Caden Stearns, give him a run for his money as well. So,
when we'll get into this in a minute, but one thing I don't think you'll see from Kareem, like you were going to see from a Melvin Gordon, is if he does lose his spot, is he going to be a cancer on this team? Is he going to be a disruption in the locker room, or is he going to be that veteran leader and when his number is called again, be ready to play?
I think where he's at in his career, a lot of people are talking about this possibly being his last contract as it is.
Right.
Signing for a low amount. He could have said, you know what, if it's that much, I'll just walk away. I don't think he put himself in a fairly good position. He's a pretty intelligent man if you ever got to actually hear him speak or at length. So I'm hoping that he is in that position of, again, taking that mature role, as you said, and being able to, not only maybe take the bench, but be able to help coach these guys as he's from the bench. If a Caden Stearns ends up beating him out, or maybe ends up, again, it's
splitting time with him,
right. Or in season switches that we see where, hey, maybe Kareem, maybe we need to make a change here. And Caden Stearns has been looking so good in practice. We're going to make that change. Hopefully, again, like you said, he has that maturity to do that.
Right.
But then you have you have all these other guys, Jamar Johnson, who's been, a guy that's been in our system for a little while. PJ Locke is obviously looking to hit the field. J.R. Reed that was brought in on a contract, and another just fantastic athlete in DeLaron Turner-Yell that we picked up through the draft. So trying to figure out who we have fit in. I know I have some numbers. We did keep 5 safeties and kept 0 on the practice squad in 2021. So that being said, there would obviously need to be a couple of decisions made.
I think this year they're going to try to stash one. I think Delani and Turner-Yell might be a candidate for that. I mean, he's a rookie. Be interesting to see what they do with PJ Locke. I mean, that was a guy you brought up a few shows ago that was one of your, breakout candidates, and see how he has progressed.
Yeah, again, when we start looking at some of the defensive schemes, and we were kind of talking about a little bit earlier, we need to have more defensive back / safeties on the field at times. And, You know,
Yep.
PJ Locke is definitely one of those guys that if you're looking maybe at that QB spy, play more down in the box, be that guy doesn't necessarily need to be out in coverage, that really obviously could just bring the hammer. And it seems like he's always playing around the ball and making great plays. I could see him taking a role like that within this defense as well. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree, and I mentioned this earlier. Special teams is going to play into who they keep. They might not be the third corner or third safety, but they might be the best special teams guy, and that's what makes this roster for him.
I realize that it's Paul Montoya that's calling us out. He wasn't calling out anybody else. I'm saying, how can you be surprised that Justin Simmons is the number one safety? So, I mean, I'll leave that to you. That was your comment. You were kind of surprised that ESPN ranked him number one. What was your surprise, and who do you think is in competition, or what is your surprise, Jody?
I'm not saying that I don't see him as a number one safety. I was surprised. There are some other guys out there that I thought was going to get some more recognition, like the guy in Tennessee. I think he's really good. Honey Badger's still pretty good.
Yeah.
And there's some guys out there that are. I mean, you've got the guy in Jamal Adams is really good. The guy in Pittsburgh, Fitzgerald, he's really good. So I was more surprised that Fitzpatrick. I was more surprised that they put him there. I'm not surprised because I see him as one of the top safeties. I was just surprised to see the pundits put him there.
Understood. We see them, and sometimes even we have rose-tinted glasses, but we see him as a number one or the number one. Not surprising to see him at there. To me, sometimes it just seems like the Denver Broncos are one of those teams that get overlooked, especially when you have, obviously our record. And again, as we were talking before the show, it's been a rough 6 years. So we've kind of went down the recognition trail. Last year, not even having a primetime game. Obviously, that's changed this year.
Right.
So it's a lot of times we get overlooked. And then to top it all off, you do have the Kansas City Chiefs in your division who tend to get all this recognition.
Right.
And let's face it, we're not in a two-team division either. Everyone ranks us as one of the toughest as you look at the Chargers and the Chiefs and the Raiders and the Broncos. So I think I would agree with you. I think it's just surprising that ESPN was actually willing to look at the Broncos and truly name us, give us the nod, and give Justin Simmons the nod as the number one safety in the league. We have we do have our good friend Matt Staffiero jumping in too, so we should at least say hi. Good evening, gents, he says. So hello, Matt. Nice to see you, bud. I think we'll just run through some comments really quick. Hopefully I don't have anything I'm going to run through and not even read before I put them on. So it's like unedited. Don't put anything on here I can't read, guys. So I think I might have to do as a person as well, who is more complete on the field or off the field. I'm not sure who that's about. This is the downside. Paul jumping in. You're right. Our top-notch guys get overlooked. 100%. I don't care if it's our current roster or even when we start talking about those Hall of Fame candidates, like we were talking just the other week, kind of as a warm up to our show. Denver Broncos country gets overlooked way, way too much.
And when you're on a bad team, you tend to get overlooked really quickly. That's what Denver's been the last 6 years.
Well, yeah, and not that a lot of guys are looking to head to the Pro Bowl and enjoy the festivities like they have in the years past. But how many Pro Bowlers did we have last year, bud?
Zero.
So again, those being overlooked, I don't care if it's Hall of Fame, Pro Bowl, the fact that we're, in the same division as the Kansas City Chiefs, just surprising, but I'm 100% agree. I'm so excited that Justin Simmons is not only a number one safety, B, he's getting recognized by ESPN, but probably most importantly, C, he's on our team and we have him locked down for a few years.
And I hope
so.
that motivates him to keep putting in the work to stay at that position.
Matt jumping in, just talking about the safety room. He says it's stacked. Stearns, Locke, and Johnson have a ton of potential. Turner, Yell, another one of those guys. Got to see him hit the field, and that's coming up here again just in 8 days. So it's funny. We could be talking about a guy like a J.R. Reed, that was actually brought in that maybe doesn't make the cut at all. It's always weird to me when we end up signing a guy and bringing him in from another team, and then there's always that possibility he doesn't end up making it. I just look at this, and it's a really tough room to try to pick, even if, as you said, hey, maybe we try to stash one this year. I hope so, because if not, I think we're trying to narrow this down to
right
to where we need to be, right? We would have to still delete. We're going to have to delete one or two guys off of this list, maybe. So it's.
And I think with only 3 preseason games, you might see Simmons and Kareem for maybe a quarter or a couple games, and that's it. So you're going to see a lot of these guys. They're going to get plenty of time to show what they have.
Yeah, 100%. I think when you start talking about, obviously a Justin Simmons, he gets named number 1. Not a whole lot of reason for him to go out there and make sure he's quote unquote ready for the season. Kareem Jackson, a guy that, again, is aging. This is probably his last contract, his last year in the league, possibly more. It's really up to him, but signed to the Denver Broncos for a year. I don't need to go out there and make sure that Kareem Jackson is ready and risk any type of injury. So we're going to see these guys come out there in those top 2 spots be kind of wiped out. I wouldn't be surprised if we see little to no, like you said, a quarter, maybe a couple of series. There's not a whole lot of reason to have these guys out on the field for much longer than that. And we'll get plenty of time to see these guys. If you don't happen to see any training camp, footage, to be able to actually see these guys on the field come those 3 preseason
And that's why
games.
I think this is a very important training camp for the veterans, because I don't think a lot of them are going to get a lot of playing time in the preseason. And with it being a new defense, you better be ready for week 1.
That's very true. Matt's jumping in. He's wondering if we end up recouping any draft picks. Maybe we could see like a Trinity Benson style trade with one of these guys. He's thinking maybe Jamar Johnson. Your thoughts on that? I mean, I think that's certainly a possibility.
Yeah, I could see a Jamar Johnson or maybe a PJ Locke. I would say Caden Stearns, but I think they have such high hopes, and knowing that Kareem's on a 1-year deal here, I think they're grooming him to. He was good last year. He wasn't all the way there yet, and they wanted one more season to get him groomed all the way.
Agreed. I think we were like literally this close to putting Caden Stearns right next to Justin Simmons this year. If Kareem Jackson didn't want to come back on the deal that we were offering, I think that's the direction that we would have went. I think that's another reason that we see like a Turner Yell and a J.R. Reed brought in, is again because without knowing, and again Kareem Jackson on this last year, we need to start thinking about the future when it comes to at least that position and some of these backup positions as well. So
and the more I think about that, he's trying to recruit picks from this Wilson trade. So if he can get whatever he can get, he's going to try to recoup them picks.
It would be interesting. I like the idea of Jamar Johnson. I think that Matt jumped into and mentioned. But PJ Locke is a name that certainly has hit the field a little bit more and has gotten a little bit more tape, I think. And it would be interesting to see what his value might be for some of these other teams out there as well.
Right.
Elijah Reed says, "Oh, nice show, fellas." Well, thank you, Elijah. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate everybody. And again, appreciate the comments. I appreciate all the questions you have coming in, a little bit of banter. Paul calling us out, and Victor making sure that Josie Jewell is on the cut line, as always. So,
and I think injuries are going to play a part in this too. I mean, every team has them, and I mean that could really make it an easy decision. Hey, we've got this guy that we like but don't love, and you need a safety, and you might be able to get a little more than what you thought out of him.
Well, and that's just it. Unfortunately, I thought you were originally going to start talking about injuries to our room and our roster. Seems like that's always
No,
the case. It's
fingers
nothing you
crossed
want
that
to say.
doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. Training camp coming up. Obviously, there's always seems like there's an injury or two that comes out of that. And then of course the 3 preseason games we'll have coming on as well. But you're right. If the right guy goes down, all of a sudden you start seeing a scramble. Just look at like for me, the Baltimore Ravens last year and all the struggles they had from preseason all the way through the regular season with their running backs.
All right.
They were just decimated, and they were looking at just about everybody and anybody to fill those holes from a week to week basis. It seemed you never know when those opportunities are going to come up, and like you said, if it does happen to a place in training camp where a team is looking to fulfill that or fill that role because they've lost that only brings that value up even further. Correct. So Paul wants to know. I think we might have touched on this like maybe episode 1, but he wants to know what our predictions are for our overall record. He's saying 10-6 now. We have a 17-game season, so keep that in mind, Paul. You don't get 10-6 anymore, right?
10 wins has got to be the minimum this year, in my opinion.
Is that your expectation? Is that what we need to get to? Is that what we need to do to get the playoffs?
That's my expectations to get to the playoffs. I mean, that's what made the playoffs last year, and I think teams only got better. Look at San Diego. Look at Denver. I mean, this division might cannibalize itself, so you better win some other games. So,
yeah, that's 100% true. I mean, that everyone talks about, and that's one of the things that I'm like just really. I mean, any one of these teams, if they start dropping losses to their division rivals, I mean, it just goes downhill quick. You know what I mean? Like you said, you need to be competitive in every single one of these games. I mean, even if you're splitting these games, you're only picking up 4 wins and 4 losses. You need to go out and you need to pick up another 7 wins, against other people. I mean, it just puts you in such a deficit when you start talking about, hey, maybe we only get 7 losses. Well, if you split every single one of your, and I said 4, but if you split every single one of your division opponents, that's 3 losses right there.
3 losses, right? Yeah.
So you're already halfway there to your losses. That doesn't leave you a whole lot more for if you have to go up against a Baltimore with Lamar Jackson or the like. Again,
right.
I don't have the
schedule
right up in front of me, but I know that's one scary game that if everyone's checked in and playing well in Baltimore, the one that I'm going to be a little bit nervous about. So Matt just jumping in, he says that he thinks the one guy I think Denver has to count on to remain healthy is Ronald Darby. Darby is the key to the success in the secondary. Well, yeah,
I agree with that.
Matt, I was going to say, from what we were talking about, looking at that cornerback room, and again, just to bring it up, again, there's not a whole lot of veteran leadership coming out of this room, especially when it comes to veteran leadership that's also been on the Denver Bronco roster and in those rooms. Ronald Darby is that guy, elevated all the way to the top, and then you got to look at Patrick Surtain being number 2 because he's the guy who really was on the field the most. He was on the field more than like a Michael Ojemudia was. So he's the guy who's having to fill a role, and he even talked about it as he hit the podium, how he's trying to get out there and try to be a little bit more of a leader this year, already in year 2. So,
one of those 2 guys go down, I mean, you've got big question marks. Who steps up? Who's your next guy in line? I mean, you got some big question marks if they can't stay healthy this year.
And thus your idea of does Chris Harris Jr.
That was more wishful thinking, but
yeah. But honestly, does Chris Harris Jr. come back and be able to fulfill a role a little bit, and be able to add some of that veteran leadership that we need?
Right.
Heaven forbid if one of those guys go down. So Albert comes in and thinks that we could be a 12-5 team this year. Paul jumping back in and saying, okay, I'm going to go to 11-6 then. He's not going with another loss. He's going with another win as he gave us a 10-6 record to begin with. And they said maybe 10-7. But I think as everyone is kind of pointing out here, and as you pointed out, I think it will need to be a 10-win season if we're going to be sniffing the playoffs this year in what could just be a contentious battle in the AFC, let alone the AFC West. So, whew.
Well, I have a quick question for you. What are your thoughts on this coaching staff? We haven't really, talked about that very much. Did you like the hire, or were you wanting someone else?
I'll be honest. When I end up liking the hire, especially when it came to head coach, right? Was once Aaron Rodgers didn't come to the Denver Broncos.
I agree with that. I was never on board with bringing him in.
It wasn't the fact that this was my concern. It was that we end up bringing in Nathaniel Hackett just for Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Rodgers just for Nathaniel Hackett and vice versa, right? And we all know that Aaron Rodgers is an amazing quarterback. I wouldn't have minded him on this roster. He wasn't my number one choice. I wasn't ecstatic or jumping up and down saying, get Aaron Rodgers into our locker room, into Broncos country. That wasn't me. But my biggest concern was, are we only bringing him over because of Aaron Rodgers? Does this guy actually have some ability? Now, everything I've seen, all the interactions he's had, I'm liking everything I've seen. It's one of those situations where, like I said before, where I'm going to reserve judgment until I see something different. It seems like he's got everybody on his side. It doesn't matter if it's John Elway and George Payton. It doesn't matter if it's, Justin Simmons, Bradley Chubb, you name it. It seems like every single player, every single coach, every single executive is really excited about Nathaniel Hackett being in the room, in his role and coaching the Denver Broncos. And quite honestly, and what he brought as far as an offensive scheme and his overall tenure, if you look, it's not like he's new to coaching. He's been around the league for quite some time. So I'm pretty excited for what we brought. Obviously, we needed a change. It's completely different than what we had. And until proven otherwise, I'm excited to see what Nathaniel Hackett's bringing. How about you, bud?
Of all the changes this year, that's my biggest concern is this coaching staff.
And rightfully so, right? I mean, if you look up and down this roster, it's not like, or I guess you could say coaching roster, it's not like you see a whole lot of tenure, especially in the positions they're currently holding.
Now, there are some decisions that I like Denver making, bringing in Don Capers as a defensive advisor to help out with and I'm don't want to butcher his name, the DC.
Yeah,
bringing him in. I mean, I think that's a smart move. I mean, you got a rookie head coach, a rookie OC, a rookie DC.
Yep.
I mean,
that's
agree. Why I've been saying tap the brakes on. We're going to the Super Bowl this year. I mean,
okay.
I mean, you've got a rookie coaching staff, and there's going to be growing pains.
Maybe there is, but at the same time, this is what also I'm excited about. It seems like we've always been going that kind of the old coaching route, I guess you could say. I don't care if it was Kubiak. I don't care if it was, Fangio. It just seemed like we were never jumping ahead. I still remember, not that he's a young coach, but at the same time, when you look at our rivals in the Chiefs, and they're bringing in Patrick Mahomes, and they're like, we're adapting our offense around him, and we're going to make this a dynamic offense with the people that we have on our roster. I never felt like that with the Broncos. I always felt like we were always conforming to a system, an idea, a principle. We're trying to fit square blocks into round holes sometimes, and I'm excited for what it seems like this coaching staff is trying to do, and saying, hey, we're going to bring in dynamic players. We're going to put dynamic players in the right position to be dynamic, and we're going to put the best guys on the field to do that. And like I said, until proven otherwise, I'll be like Albert. I am thrilled with the hire of these coaches until proven otherwise. I think you just brought in some great minds. You got an offense from Green Bay. You've got a defense from the Rams. We've got a lot of great players. System isn't changing a ton on defense. I know the offense, that's going to be the biggest thing, is how this all comes together. It's kind of like the I don't know, the goulash, you know what I mean? That you're just mixing in all the ingredients, you know what I mean? A lot of different hands and a lot of different ideas when it comes to
what all
what
three
this
of them
offense will be.
They learned from first-time young head coaches herself and LaFleur and McVay. So, I think that's only going to be beneficial. The one thing that I am a little worried about is I have yet to see Hackett, when something goes wrong, can he not be the rah-rah guy and get in your face and let you know that you messed up? I haven't seen that yet. That's the one thing I worry about a little bit, is can he not be such a player's coach and you messed up and let you know about it and move on?
Yeah. The one, I guess the one comment I heard a little bit about that maybe would, I don't know, maybe set your mind at ease. And I'm obviously paraphrasing, but they said, what is it like when you do something wrong? What does that interaction look like with Nathaniel Hackett? And the comment was basically, he treats you like a man. He comes up there, he lets you know what you did wrong. You're not, you're not in the doghouse. You're nothing like that. You just go out there and it's like, hey, you did this wrong. Let's change it. Let's move forward. And if that's the way he's approaching things, and people are actually listening and taking his direction, and we're seeing improvements, that's really all we can really ask for, in my opinion. So a lot of different. Go ahead, man.
What are your thoughts on him calling plays? I mean, we've seen that with Vic, and it was like, we're only focused on defense, and when the offense is out there, good luck. I mean, he didn't care about that side of the ball.
Well, my thoughts on that, honestly, not that the defense is something that you can ignore, but goodness, you need to be able to concentrate on the offense in this day and age. It is the key to what gets you all your results this day and age. And that's the thing that frustrated me with Vic. Now that it's a role reversal, we might see some fall off a little bit, obviously, from a defensive perspective when it comes to the our head coach being part of that discussion, especially come game day, and being involved. But I think I'm more excited for the benefit that we're getting for the offense than the negative that we'll get from the defense, even though, as you pointed out, hey, we got a lot of questions. It's not a tenured staff. Maybe Dom Capers is helping us out a little bit, but besides that, it's putting a lot of responsibility on that defense to go out there and perform without their head coach really being involved.
And I only asked him, being a first-time head coach, is it too much? I mean, you've got to lead the whole team, not just the offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think in everything that I've heard too, like they said, it's not like you don't prepare all week next to these guys. It's not like you game plan with these, and that's the big thing. How involved are you in these rooms? How much are you going over tape through the week with these other coaches? How much are you aligned and being prepared, to where, maybe you have to hand this off come game day, basically, to your defense. You're not interjecting a whole lot unless it comes to those situations. I mean, we saw it with Vic Fangio, where it's like, man, we should be calling a timeout. Why aren't we calling a timeout?
Right.
Well, Vic Fangio isn't, in the moment, because he's thinking about defense and we're out there on offense.
Yeah, he's sitting on the bench with his defense. Yeah.
Hopefully you're in that position where, hey, when it comes to those positions, and that is what we're going to have to see from Nathaniel Hackett, as it is with every brand new head coach. How are these guys going to actually perform? Are they going to be that person that can juggle all the balls, keep everything up in the air, and all the players in line, and put a performance out there that we're, expecting and proud of, or are they going to have struggles, and where are they going to have those struggles? We see it. Every coach has struggles. I even think about the Cincinnati Bengals, their amazing run to the Super Bowl. Quite honestly, their coach was looking to almost be fired when the season was beginning.
Right.
So, and he did not have a whole lot of tenure, but because of some of the things that were happening in the first couple of years that he was with Cincinnati, they were already looking at maybe it's time to move on from this guy. Runs to the Super Bowl, and we're never thinking about that again. It'll be interesting to see how this staff, I just have high hopes. And again, I'm a prove me wrong type of guy. Prove me wrong, and then I'll have something to say. Until then, I'm going to have a little bit of faith. I think they have the capability to do that.
And that's
we
why
have a ton of comments coming in. Go ahead, man.
That's why I think Don Capers is so vital to this team. I mean, head coaching experience, many years as a DC. I mean, people are underestimating that. I think that's going to be big.
I think that's a great point to bring up and bring to the show, because I think that it has been overlooked a little bit. And Don Capers is quite honestly one of those defensive minds, one of those defensive gurus that is a Hall of Famer, probably walking among on the field as we speak, right? So to bring a guy like that in, great point, Jody. Just invaluable. Run through a few comments, and then we got one more portion of our show. So Matt saying he's undecided on the staff. Hey, he's got some knowledge of the game. He's just got to put it all together. However, I do trust Peyton. Albert coming in, he says Hackett shows emotion, and that's what was lacking from the previous regime. Hey, there is no doubt about that. I think that's one of the biggest things that we're looking forward to. Even the players are looking forward to.
And that's one thing I think Vic last year went to Shermer and basically told him we're winning games on defense. So
yeah,
100%. He had no whatever you want to call it to score points. He didn't care. I'm going to show you can still win games with defense.
Yeah, no, I think it was. I think let's face it. He was a hot seat coach last year from the very get-go. And if you're a defensive-minded coach that's known for your defense and shutting people down and keeping low-scoring points, I think he put all his eggs in one basket and said, I'm going to put all my efforts into this defense and make sure that, hopefully we can win enough games just through that alone, right?
And there was no want to evolve at all. I mean, we're not going to win games 37-36. He'd rather lose games 15-10.
Yeah.
And show that his defense played well.
Albert coming in and says a rookie head coach doesn't have to be bad. Look at the Rams head coach. Yeah, McVay obviously did fantastic. I just seem I think he's the rarity, right? Sometimes it's not very often that a rookie head coach, never been head coaching in this league before, just jumps in and takes off running. There's usually a hiccup or two. I guess I'm just the realist. I'm going to expect it to happen.
But I have hopes because look at Kyle Shanahan calls his own plays.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
been successful. Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, all calling their own plays and been pretty successful.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There has been quite a bit. I know.
So I do have hope. I have hope in that. I mean, Andy Reid's still calling his own plays. I mean, he's been doing it for a while, but still calling his plays. So.
No, I think if you bring in an offensive mind, sometimes I'm even more upset if you're handing that off, right? It's like, geez, I'd much rather have that first contact. Matt saying McDaniels left a bad taste in previous exec's mouth, didn't want to explore the youthful. Yeah.
There was nothing good of what Josh did here.
I didn't know. Maybe it was like you said, that bad taste, Matt. I'm obviously, Jody, you feel the same, but I found it somewhat comical when the Raiders end up signing McDaniels. It'll be interesting to see what that guy ends up doing in his second tenure, as a NFL head coach.
Can he do like Belichick did? I mean, he struggled in Cleveland, and can he turn it around? his
Yeah,
second go. And he was right there with Belichick. I mean, he's had to have learned something.
you would hope so, but then again, we had our tenure that we had with the Denver Broncos, and I even go back, and one of the things that just maybe added to my disdain, I guess you could say, of McDaniels was his Indianapolis Colts. I'm your head coach. I'm not your head coach. Routine
Right.
as well. That really just again just leveled me up, I guess you could say, on a guy that it's like, man, I just don't feel like I can trust this guy. He trades away Jay Cutler for Kyle Orton.
I mean, he traded everyone away.
he decimates our team and then goes back to the Patriots eventually, I guess. But you know what I mean? He commits to Indianapolis and then decommits. I mean, best of luck, Raiders. Not actually best of luck. I hope you have the worst of luck. But that being said, I just was surprised at the signing. So
The one thing I will give him is he admitted he was young and he made a lot of mistakes and he learned from those. So we'll see. I mean, that was a long time ago. What was that? 2006, 5?
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
it's a long time
17
ago.
years ago.
And anybody that isn't a Denver Bronco fan or was a Denver Bronco fan, or was a Denver Bronco themselves, maybe look at Josh McDaniels a little bit different. He's known as this fantastic offensive mind that everyone's been looking to, get back into head coaching for a while now. And so here it is, here's his second chance. Like you said, you never know. It's not like Pete Carroll had a great run with the Patriots before he, got his second chance with the Seattle Seahawks. You know what I mean? So there's lots of instances that I guess you can go through and say, second chance is what these guys needed. Well, Jody, I'm going to take just a little break. I want to tell our listeners about a Colorado company, and that's Willow Seasonings and Blends. Check out their award-winning Sweet Heat All-Purpose Rub, the 2022 American Royal Best Rub on the Planet in the hot category, or make your next barbecue a hit with their amazing Sweet Thang sweet and tangy barbecue sauce. And right now, new customers get an additional 15% off their already great prices by typing in new 15 into the coupon code box. So that's NEW15 new 15, and you get an additional 15% off. Also type in Denver Bronco Roundup in the comment box, and that gives us a little credit too. So head on over to their website. It's willowseasonings.com. That's willowseasonings.com, and spice up your life today. All right, man. Now round out our battles. We're going to take a look at one last one for this evening, bud. It's a little bit of an easier one. So we're going to look at, not safeties, because we already did that. We're going to look at some special teams. As you go through, you can just kind of obviously hit some locked up spots. I'm going to go through the comments really quick, make sure we don't have anything, if you don't mind, Jody.
I think Brandon McManus, I mean, he's obviously a lock. One of the best kickers in the league. It'll be interesting to see how Denver, what they decide at punter. I mean, you got Sam Martin, who played decent last year, paying him a decent amount, and they got the new guy in, and he's a left-footed punter. From all reports, it's totally different catching it off a left foot than a right foot. So I think that could be a good battle. And then I think Montel Washington, he was drafted in the 5th round. They brought him in for a reason. And I think Denver has not had an electric, punt kick returner since probably Trenton Holiday. And that's going back 2012, 2013, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So
just before, I don't know if we'll end up catching him, but Paul just was jumping in. He had a few other comments before this, but he says, thanks for the talk, guys. Have a good night and God bless.
Thanks, Paul.
Paul, thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate you jumping in and all your comments, all your questions, along with all our listeners, Albert, Matt, and everybody else that we've seen come through this evening. Thank you so much. So, as I look at special teams, like you said, Brandon McManus, obviously our lock, no competition even brought in for him. We've seen sometimes in years past a kicker brought in for whatever reason. I don't think he ever had a whole lot of worry when it came to that. But then we look at punter, and that's one place that, boy, I was really hoping when Sam Martin came in, he would be our answer. How do you feel about Sam Martin being been our answer in since he's been on this Denver Broncos roster at punter?
For what they're paying him, I don't know that he's lived up to that contract yet. But for what they've had in the past, I think he was much better than these guys that they were pulling off the street in these 1 year Colby Waltman, and guys like that were just horrible.
Yeah, I agree. I just was really, especially like as you pointed out a little bit earlier in our conversation, we were talking a little bit more about defense and a little less about special teams. Vic Fangio was such a defensive, hey, I just want to try to win it on defense type of guy. Field position became so important. Man, I was hoping for just a little bit more out of Sam Martin. I'm not too sure about what Corliss Waitman brings to the table. But at the same time, I'm not object to seeing maybe a change of punter if that's a possibility. If Corliss Waitman comes in and is able to actually show something that Sam Martin hasn't.
I think the left foot is the curveball.
Agreed. It's kind of like that left-handed pitcher, right? That everyone kind of covets. They're not looking for that right-handed pitcher. Right. That left-handed that left-footed kicker will bring something else to the table. Speaking of, hey, just guys in the past and wanting improvement and how long we've been waiting for that. And I guess out of a punter, I don't know how much you remember, but man, the old coffin kicks that we used to get back in the day where these guys would literally angle these punts, especially for us, it seemed like we always stalled out for our Denver Broncos over the last couple of years, right around midfield to where we should be able to get that kick out of bounds inside the 10-yard line.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And hopefully inside that 10-yard line, get it out of bounds, not get that touchback, and limit some of the returns that we saw, especially as in special teams, as we're kind of talking about that. We haven't always been the best at necessarily covering punts either. So
that's a part that's really overlooked is field position like that. How just an average 45, 50-yard punt can, really change the game.
Yeah,
Or you kick it right where the guy can return it. You don't give your special teams a chance to get down the field. And
correct.
Before your team's down there, they've ran it 15, 20 yards before you even down there.
Before you can even get really into place to make those tackles, to make those plays, right?
Right.
It's just a place that, again, if we could – we've been talking about this, I know, on our old show here on the Rocky Mountain Sports Network when I was on 4th and 99, it was a place of contention about how bad our special teams would play on a week-in, week-out basis sometimes, and just really put our Broncos in a bad position when it came to our defense. And again, a punter is someplace that I wouldn't mind seeing a change if it's a change in the right direction. Maybe Waitman again with his left foot gets a chance and maybe puts Sam Martin out there. But then we should just jump over to those return guys, and who do you think makes the team? And do they all make the team? And because of obviously they're not just not returners.
Right.
These aren't return specialists. These guys do have some wide receiver ability, especially in a couple of different guys. And B, who do you think makes who fills that spot as kick returner week one at least?
I think Montel Washington is going to get first shot at punt and kick returner, and we'll see how that goes. I think KJ Hamler will be probably your number 4 wide receiver. He'll make this roster. And I think Kendall Hinton has a good shot. I mean, the times we've seen him at wide receiver, he played pretty well, and he could be a good backup if Montel doesn't pan out as a kick returner.
Yeah.
So you got some options. I think ultimately all three, 2 of the 3 will, and maybe Hinton makes this roster as well. So
yeah, Kendall Hinton, a name that obviously will live in Bronco lore a little bit as well, as he was our pandemic quarterback.
Hall of Fame quarterback.
Hall of Famer, already got pieces in the Hall of Fame. So
Yeah.
not every QB can say that. Take that, Justin Herbert. I don't think he
Yep.
has anything in there. Yeah. So
Yep.
that being said, though, maybe this is the guy we've talked about it episode after episode that ends up possibly being a trade piece on this roster. Again, it seems like we have a pretty stacked wide receiver room when it comes to up and down the roster. We're trying to make room at on our special teams and returner, and
Right.
have a guy like Montel Washington back there, just chomping at the bit, and obviously could be one of the fastest guys we've seen on the Broncos roster in quite some time. So I think that that's a possibility that we see. It would be sad to see him go, like you said, Hall of Fame quarterback for the Denver Broncos to get traded away like this, but or Hall of Fame wide receiver. I don't know how you want to put that, but Kendall Hinton,
Right.
again, a guy that's kind of been sitting in that returner spot, wide receiver
I'm pulling
spot.
for him.
Yeah, I wish nothing bad for the guy.
He's done everything they've asked of him. I mean, they put him in a horrible position, come in and play quarterback in that game. I mean, he didn't cause that, but and he played.
He just got to deal with the repercussion of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, and then last year, moving to wide receiver, and when he played, he made plays. I'll remember the Dallas game to steal it, that long slant for a touchdown. I mean, for sure that play. I mean, when he made the field, he made plays.
Agreed. And again, not hoping anything bad on Kendall Hinton either. Honestly, a lot of times when these guys get traded, it's for a reason. They're actually getting a better opportunity than what they may have received here on our team. So I'm hoping, again, much like Nathaniel Hackett, hey, we have the best 53 guys to hit the field. If Kendall Hinton happens to be that 53rd guy, I'm happy. If it's Sam Martin, I'm happy. If it happens to be any of these guys I'm talking about, I'm happy. But at the same time, I think there'll be some dissatisfaction in Broncos country as maybe we see some of these names, again, that we know, like, and love maybe disappear, go on to other teams, or just disappear from NFL rosters.
I do think he makes it, now that you brought that up, a good trade piece. I mean, he did put enough film out that he was a good wide receiver. I think he's someone that could be a decent slot guy and can return.
Yeah, I mean, he's a multifaceted guy. Seems like there's always wide receivers and a need for wide receivers. We see guys hurt every single year. So, and always trying to fill out a roster. You know what I mean? That'll be the other thing that, we haven't even got to or even really thought about as we start cutting all our guys and getting down to our 53-man roster. So is all these other teams. We have 31 other teams that have to cut rosters and have to make all these decisions. And every year we see names drop off of rosters that we're surprised about and maybe even are somewhat enticed to bring on to this Broncos roster. Again, making some of our selections that we've made throughout these weeks maybe a little bit null and void, as we need to make one or two more roster spots in order for that to happen.
Right. Yep.
Oh man, I tell you what, it's like I said,
it's definitely going to be interesting, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be exciting.
Training camp, like I said, 8 days away. That's when it all starts, man. It's when we start to see these guys hit the field and start making names for themselves, moving up and down the depth chart as it may be, and really get an idea of what we might start seeing on the field come week one. So wow. Well, I think we've wrapped up special teams. At least it wasn't a tough one. We had only a few names we had to get through.
Right.
So I think it's about time we just hit a few things that we always hit at the end of our shows. One of them was a poll, and I'm realizing now. Let me see if I can pull this up. I'm gonna see if I have this. Oh, I don't. So unfortunately, I didn't bring up the slide, but seems like I'm forgetting to slide every single week, bud. At least this time we had all of of our players and all our different roster
Right.
spots. But poll of the week last week was we had 3 different wide receiver trios. We had the 3 amigos, Mark Jackson, Vance Johnson, and Ricky Nattiel. We have our current lineup, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, and Jerry Jeudy. And, of course, one of the Peyton Manning trios. And I'll be honest, I had a little bit of discussion even online with another gentleman about which trio I picked. But Demaryius Thomas, rest in peace, Eric Decker, and Brandon Stokely was our 3 choices. Who is your choice, bud? Out of those 3, who is your favorite wide receiver trio?
Out of those 3, probably Demaryius Thomas, Eric Decker, and Stokely. But there is a trio that was left off that was probably my favorite.
Okay, well, this is what I got a lot of, bud. So go ahead, hit me with it.
My favorite was Demaryius Thomas, Eric Decker, and Julius Thomas.
But see, this is where I got into a little bit of debate with a few different people. What position did Julius Thomas play?
Tight end.
Yeah, he wasn't a receiver. I wanted my wide receiver trios. If not, I would have.
You could throw or a Wes Welker. I mean, if you're going to throw a slot guy like Stokely, I think I was a Wes Welker guy.
That was the other big one. That was the one that I really debated on. Hey, which of these guys do I want to put on between those 2, right? Because Wes Welker, Brandon Stokely, Wes Welker, statistically, I guess you could say, didn't put up as many numbers sometimes as Brandon Stokely, but at the same time, like I said, it was a tough debate because it seemed like Wes Welker was just that guy that always came up big. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. Well, good point. Just one of the best of all time. So what more can you say after that? So a lot of love came obviously across the board, and I'm just trying to pull up. And I apologize because I'm trying to pull up all the numbers, but basically it came down to this. I got it here. So when it came down to overall voting, unfortunately, our current lineup: Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy. I would say the jury is out. A lot of people said maybe soon, but not yet on this trio. But especially when you're talking about some of the biggest names and the biggest triplets, I guess you could say, for Denver Broncos country, maybe it's to be expected. They only took in 1% of the vote. So again, jury's out when it comes to that trio. Coming in second was the 3 amigos. They came in with 40%. Mark Jackson, Vance Johnson, and Ricky Nattiel. And our overall winner with 53% was the Peyton Manning trio of Demaryius Thomas, Eric Decker, and Brandon Stokely. So, it'd
be interesting to know how many of the viewers, if they got to see the 3 amigos play. That's true. Do they really know besides name? Yeah.
Besides folklore and like you said, the nostalgia of what the 3 amigos were. Yeah, it was interesting. I had one commenter come in, and it was somewhat true. John Elway made the 3 amigos. John Elway was just that quarterback. He's one of the best of all times. I think in a lot of ways you could put a lot of different receiving cores around John Elway, and they would put up fantastic numbers because of just who he was in his prime. So teamed up in the prime, 3 amigos to me, because I am old enough. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. I appreciate it, Jody. But I'm plenty old enough to see these guys play, and honestly, it was exciting. The guys were really fun to watch. Just a great trio. Seemed like they enjoyed each other. And I think that was always part of it, right? Is just the enjoyment those 3 guys had together on the field. And let's face it, taking some of those catches and being part of like the drive and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It is a little bit of Denver Bronco lore. I had a lot of people, if you did the calculations, if anybody did the calculations at home, we were short about 5%. that was my kind of undecided or categories like Jody, where he really wanted the tight end in. Had a lot of people wanting the Shannon Sharp, Rod Smith, Ed McCaffrey to be a part of that list. Again, not a true wide receiver trio with Shannon Sharp, though I guess he was a wide receiver at one point.
He didn't block like a tight end.
He didn't block like a tight end. He was a converted wide receiver, to be 100% honest. So,
right.
I mean, it was probably more of a wide receiver trio than what it was on paper,
right,
as far as the roster is concerned. But I also think if I ever would have put up Ed McCaffrey, Rod Smith, and Shannon Sharp, if you think our current trio didn't get much love at 1%, I think that would have been a runaway. We're talking about three of the greatest wide receivers in Denver Bronco history. In those three, I don't know how they wouldn't have come out as the overall number one winner in probably a runaway fashion. If I put that trio up, right?
I think if you put that poll up after this year, some of that changes. I think these guys have never had a respectable even an above average quarterback. So,
yeah. 100%, right? I mean, Cortland Sutton had one great year, and it's not like he was paired up with, like you said, the top quarterbacks in the league. We've got one of the top quarterbacks in the league. It's really going to be really exciting, not only for these wide receivers, but just to see how this offense is going to function with someone of Russell Wilson's caliber under center this year. It's going to be, I think it's really going to be a night and day difference.
And you could see it last year. Receivers checked out, it was not good. And you can just see it in interviews and in different things. I mean, the excitement's back and they're ready to go.
Yeah. The mindset from the end of last year to the beginning this year is night and day, 180-degree difference, black and white, whatever you want to put to it.
Yeah.
It's exciting
for sure.
It's not only exciting for Broncos players, but I think it's exciting for us fans as well. All right, man. One last little piece, and we always do a little trivia to follow up. So last week, we asked you this question. In 1968, when Colorado taxpayers voted against a $250,000 stadium expansion, ownership considered moving the team to, and the answer was Birmingham, Alabama, bud. So,
man, that's pretty crazy.
That's a long way from the Mile High City. I gotta admit, the Birmingham Broncos isn't a bad sounding name, and obviously they have
how different things would be in Denver.
Oh my goodness!
In this region,
I just can't even imagine it would be. And hey, I kind of understand why they're probably looking in that direction, because let's face it, that's a mecca of football going back to Birmingham, Alabama as well. So,
I mean, when you're having to use old college uniforms, I mean, you're trying to save whatever you can.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're only a few years removed from using college uniforms, getting voted down on a $250,000 stadium expansion, which probably was like $2 million, $5 million, $10 million.
I know, it's crazy to think about that. That's chump change now for.
It's like, why did they 1968 folks, dollar was worth a little bit different then. So yeah, like I said, thank goodness kept them here, didn't end up moving the team, and we have our Denver Broncos. So this week I thought I would bring a little bit more recent trivia, maybe get some people chiming in with some answers. Maybe you even get it right off the bat. I think you had guessed a closer town than Birmingham. Yeah, hoping they'd stay in the region. So this week, a little bit better. I think we'll have a little bit better chance of getting some people get the answers right. So here goes. In the 93-94 off season, the Denver Broncos made an offer of 4 years, $11 million to a future Hall of Fame player of one of our AFC West rivals. And can you name that player?
I'm not sure. I'm going to take a shot in the dark. Junior Seau.
Oh, I like that guess, man. I like that. I like the guess because I wouldn't have minded them necessarily
You're
being on
right.
the Denver Broncos roster. I will tell you, I usually don't tell you whether you're right or wrong. You're not right. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in with any guesses. If not, we're going to be wrapping up our show here. You can always find these answers. We ask you tonight, and then I'll post it up on the Denver Bronco Roundup Facebook page tomorrow, as well as the Rocky Mountain Sports Network page as well. So check it out first thing in the morning. If you're trying to guess who in the 94-95 Denver Broncos offseason got a 4-year, $11 million contract, Hall of Famer, would have been a great pairing to put on our team. I know I was really excited. Me being a little bit older, maybe I remember it better. Maybe what were you, like 6'4"? I'm just kidding.
What, 94? 9?
Oh, there we go. I wasn't too far off, man. So I say more recent, and then I make you a small child trying to recall this time. But a great guess in Junior Seau. I would have loved to brought him to the Denver Broncos. Any other guesses? Again, get him in there. I'll as always, if anybody, if you haven't noticed, we always, at least I try to jump into all the comments, interact with you guys even after the show. So if I missed your comments, again, just jump back in there and I'll hopefully be conversating with you guys a little bit later. So thank you so much. Jody, anything before we sign off tonight?
Nope, we're 8 days away, and I'm really excited. I can't wait. This is going to be a fun year.
All right. Yeah. And I would say I'm going to kind of echo kind of what you're talking about there, man. I know I'm going to get this late in the show. I don't know how many viewers are still hanging on for us, but I'm going to be making the trip. I've got all my plans in part, making the road trip to training camp, and we'll be trying to break through those gates every morning as they open up, be the first guy out there on the hill, and get a little bit of training camp for the first time in my life, and get all that information back to you, Jody, and all our listeners, man. I'm excited for it.
Should be fun.
That being said, for any of our listeners, I will be driving a 13-hour drive, maybe a few more, 13 to 14-hour drive next Tuesday, which would normally be our show. I'm going to try to bust out of here and hit the road early, make it in time so that I'll be able to be on the air come 6:30. But just stay tuned. I'll make sure that we keep you up to date. And if we're just a few minutes late, so be it. But we'll be on here. We'll be talking just a couple more battles we need to get through, and then of course, training camp will be the next day. We'll have plenty to talk about there. So, All right, Jody, I appreciate it. A great show tonight. I think we got some things straightened out. I appreciate all the participation and from all our listeners. Gonna look forward.
Thanks, everyone. Drive safe next week, and
with that, I think we're about ready to wrap up the show. Again, thank you guys so much. As always, check out the Rocky Mountain Sports Network Facebook page. Check out the Denver Bronco Roundup Facebook page. You can find Rocky Mountain Sports Network is like all over the place. So YouTube, Twitter, all those different places. You can check them out there. As always, we appreciate you. We'll see you next week. Until then, Broncos country, thank you very much.